I'm going to look at conspiracy theory. There is so much about conspiracy on at the moment. It's a bit alarming. It's a belief that some secret, powerful organization is responsible for an event or phenomena is one definition of it. Everything from the 9/11 truthers, as they're known, to those who created narratives about John Kennedy's assassination. They're trying to look at the secret causes of events. Now, this is a very early one. Do you see the image on the left? The Eye of Providence. It's on the American dollar bill, but it is extremely odd when you look at it, isn't it? It's seen by some as providing evidence linking the founding fathers to the Illuminati. They're depicted as lurking in the shadows and pulling the string and levers of power. And modern rumors suggest that Beyonce, Jay-Z, Rihanna, Madonna, and Kim Kardashian are all members of the new Illuminati. That's from Gloop magazine, which is Gwyneth Paltrow's magazine. How do you know when a hypothesis is true or not? Conspiracy theories are generally designed to resist falsification. That what Popper is saying is that real scientific statements are those which are not verified or truthful. They're those that are potentially falsifiable. So, for example, it's a form of deductive logic rather than inductive logic. If you wanted to do the inductive logic way of saying, to have a claim such as all swans are white, you'd have to theoretically observe all swans, which is not possible. Instead, falsifiability searches for the anomalies. For something to be scientific is not to be verified, but not yet falsified. The premise of all swans are white, which up to that point had not been falsified, was now falsified because these were swan in every other capacity except they were black. It's a belief, a very widely held belief when I come onto it. It's in a secretly emerging totalitarian world government. It's linked to a whole variety of isms, survivalism, paramilitarism, fundamentalist Christians, apocalyptic and millenarian scenario, the end times, the new world order. Have you heard of the end times? It started off with this century preacher called John Nelson Darby, who's the father of yet more isms, dispensationalism, futurism, and pre-tribulation rapture theology. The Plymouth Brethren, which I'm sure you've all heard of, which is kind of a rather extreme Christian grouping. But he fell out with them and then became the founder of the Exclusive Brethren. So this leads to all sorts of connections between evangelist American groups and their keenness on Judaism and Israel, because that's going to be the site of the Last Judgment. So all the things that happen, which look like they might end up in total catastrophe, is something that they actually look forward to. Anyway, another one is Freemasonry. I was actually shown round the Freemasons Lodge in Chorlton until it was eventually turned into flats, the one on Edge Lane. And a very strange place it was too. It's one of the world's oldest fraternal organizations, arising in Britain in the 18th century. There have been lots of allegations against it, saying that they've got a hidden political agenda and they're conspiring to bring about, you've guessed it, a new world order, organized according to Masonic principles or governed only by Freemasons. The supreme being in Masonic ritual goes by the title of the Great Architect of the Universe, Grand Geometrician or similar, making clear it's not tied to a particular religion's conception of God. It's more than Christianity. Tracing boards, which you can see one on an entry one from the left, is a painted or printed illustration depicting the various symbolic emblems of Freemasonry. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, I'm sure you're all aware of, was a false 1920s letter which seemed to show that the Jewish conspiracy to take over the world, which crops up even today, it's often referred to, even though it's been debunked many times before. The reptilians. Does anybody recognize that guy on the right?
David Icke.
The one and only David Icke. He argued that the Christian patriots are the only Americans who understand the truth about the New World Order, which he believes is controlled by a race of reptilians known as the Babylonian Brotherhood. There is a book recently about conspiracy which says that it's changed. The nature of conspiracy is changing. Conspiracy nearly always goes with the word theory, theories. Well, the idea now is that conspiracy, you can just invent something. It doesn't need a theory. You just state it. No demand for proof. Just its assertion. Like say that the election didn't go your way. You just say it's rigged. There's no evidence of it. It just is.
And stolen, and we're not going to let it happen again. Remember, at like 9:30 in the evening, it was 73% of the vote in. I was up by almost 1 million votes, and then all of a sudden, like magic, it disappeared. We can't let this happen. The vote counters, they're crooked as hell. These people are crooked as hell. They subpoenaed me. Did you hear this? They subpoenaed me. They don't ever investigate the one thing that people want to know. That's the election, the theft of the election.
It lives on in new forms, such as the far-right QAnon movement, which targets celebrities and Democrats instead.
Well, I don't know much about the movement other than I understand they like me very much.
He's going to even wilder areas. It's just from a search this morning of very recent articles. They get wilder and wilder. Was Joe Biden secretly Lee Harvey Oswald? The man accused of assassinating President Kennedy in 1963 was actually Joe Biden. They were born round about the same time, which I suppose is slight support of that. Others believe that the real Biden was replaced with a body double in recent years, thus throwing the connection with Lee Harvey Oswald into doubt.
Paul is dead. If you're a diehard fan of the Beatles, then you're probably quite familiar with this conspiracy theory, that Beatles bassist Paul McCartney is actually dead and was replaced in the band with a double.
According to the story, Paul McCartney died on November 9th, 1966, after his car skidded off an icy road. According to the theory, the Beatles replaced him with an imposter, a look-alike named Billy Shears.
Those who believe this theory often claim that the Beatles hid subliminal and backmasked messages in their songs as proof. In songs like Strawberry Fields Forever, there's a line where John Lennon supposedly says, "I buried Paul." Then there's Revolution 9, a song from the band's White Album that, when played backwards, is supposed to say, "Turn me on, dead man." Is it there? Maybe. But spoiler alert, Paul McCartney is very much alive.
Certainly that was circulating. I'd not heard of that one. I didn't know he was supposed to be dead. The popular modern conspiracies: Princess Diana's death was no accident. 9/11, the attack on the World Trade Center, was an inside job. COVID-19 was a form of population control. We've got QAnon. It's a big tent conspiracy theory that claims that former President Trump is facing down a shadowy cabal of Democrat pedophiles. It's got linked to anti-vaxxers, and there's been this country called Unite UK. How about the recent discussions about developing it as an army? Perhaps that could be part of the grand conspiracy. Take your own choice on that one. For QAnon, that a group of Satan-worshipping elites who run a child sex ring are trying to control our politics and media. That's 17% believe that. They also think that the ones involved in this conspiracy, as well as the usual ones you would expect, Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, George Soros, as well as them, there are celebrities like Oprah Winfrey, Tom Hanks, Ellen DeGeneres, and religious figures including Pope Francis and the Dalai Lama. Many also believe that in addition to molesting children, they eat the victims to extract a life-extending chemical called adrenochrome, which is an elixir of youth. They originally, the idea that was brain will be saved by threats such as electromagnetic fields and mind reading by wearing a tinfoil cap was the original idea. Apparently, it came from a 1927 short story written by Julian Huxley called The Tissue Culture King, wherein the main character uses a metal hat to prevent being mind controlled by the villain scientist. And now it's usually humor, isn't it? It's become associated with paranoia and conspiracy theories. This is the last one. It's the birds aren't real. The birds are drones created by the US government to spy on Americans. Birds charge their batteries on power lines. They're often seen on power lines. They track civilians using a liquid tracking device, which is when they you get their mess on your head, I suppose. Bird watching goes both ways. We're watching the birds and they're watching us. If it flies, it spies. An example of the sort of which they make these pigeons, these birds. The guy on the right with his van saying their birds aren't real. However, I came across this on a TED Talk. Are you familiar with TED Talks that are made? Yeah. And this guy called McIndoe decided he was going to start off a conspiracy theory to see if he could get people to believe it. Well, he managed to get 2,000 people out to Wash Square, demanding the mayor shut down every pigeon in the city. Well, I might agree to that, not because I believe in a conspiracy theory, though. And he played the game for 4 years, the leader of a fake movement with fake evidence and a fake history. He was seeing how far it could go. It was in the media. Then eventually, last year, he talked to the Times. It was on their front page. But his general point he was making is it was interesting when he was playing that role that people would come up to him and trying to persuade him that he was being crazy and he was being mad. And he says, it doesn't help when you do that. What you should try and do is kind of empathize a bit with their own needs from crisis of belonging. But it's a very interesting talk. Here's some modern ones. Derek isn't here. The Klopp was thinking, he said he's to leave Liverpool at the end of the year. Well, the Talk Sport analyst Simon Jordan has said that there's something else happening in the ground, and I hope it's not something sinister, which is interesting. And if you think that maybe British people are a bit above this stuff, according to this is from The Guardian, a quarter in the UK believe that COVID was a hoax. It found 1 in 7 violence is a fair response to alleged conspiracies such as 15-minute cities.
You hit on a thing that sense of belonging. Belonging something is a need of the human race, and that whether you believe something or not, it is a belief, which is a personal thing, and you believe it or not. And all of those are certainly the communities in America, like those who QAnon and so on, people are brought up in those secluded societies with a sense of belonging to the society in which they live, and they believe what all the people around them are believing.
I've just been reading a book by Peter Ackroyd called The Clerkenwell Tales, which is very interesting in terms of the discussion this morning, because it's actually about a secret conspiracy called Dominus, which it is said has existed throughout history since the reign of Richard II and may still exist. But historically, it was linked to Henry IV and his usurpation of the throne and the murder of Richard II, and he was supported by this group called Dominus. But it's Clerkenwell Tales, and it's by Peter Ackroyd.
It's fiction, presumably.
It's based on fact. It is a fiction, but it's based on fact.
Or does anybody, for example, believe that COVID was a bit of a hoax?
No, I don't.
No.
Yes. I was in touch with a lady at the beginning of COVID who got it. She was really, really ill for 3 to 4 weeks, and it took her to recover. And then from that moment on, she's denied COVID exists. She's in total denial. Had it.
Do you remember this?
Yay!
Oh, good heavens.
It's for Jack and the Beanstalk. I haven't got the music, unfortunately, with it. It came, but I just thought, it was so good, wasn't it? It was so good.